The Citizens Legislature and Citizens Line Item Veto, how they work in practice. Preemptive challenges should get rid of a lot of bad laws. A large proportion of all laws passed in the United States, and probably most countries, violate the Constitution in favor of giving the government more powers than they deserve. Most people will probably only notice that when they are sitting there in the jury and see when the government tries to pass a law and someone points out constitutional provisions forbidding it. People watching this video in the United States probably did not know prior to watching our video on preemptive challenges that nearly all their payments to the states are illegal under the U.S. Constitution. But now you have been made aware of it and could make a ruling based on that knowledge. If the Constitution needs to be modified to comport with modern realities, then it can be amended. The passage of amendments should not be easy, however, if it really needs to be modified, like it might with the aforementioned gold and silver clause, you should have massive buy-in from the public necessary to pass that amendment. The Citizens Legislature. After the preemptive challenge, the bill will be sent to another jury of citizens to approve the legislation itself. This will serve as a secondary filter before sending the bill to a broader popular electronic vote. The first reason you do this is that most bills will probably be completely shredded by the people when they have to approve them. What, you want us to pay a bag tax to grocery stores who refuse to give us paper bags and whose entire store is filled with unnecessary non-biodegradable plastic? No, we don't think so. Go virtue signal on your own time, and not at our expense. If you think these plastics are a real problem, send us a bill that actually addresses the source of the problem, the stores themselves. There is no reason to send such obviously poor provisions to the general population to ratify. The Citizens Legislature will be given a line item veto just so such crap cannot be inserted into Christmas tree bills to enrich the donor class. The members of the jury get a vote on each line item in the bill as a whole at the end. In addition to keeping out the waste and unpopular positions inconspicuously buried in each part of the bill, this also prevents legislators from trying to buy votes by including free phones for everyone in a bill that also gives money to wealthy donors. The legislator would gain nothing from the free phone bribe because the jury could just line item veto the gifts to the wealthy donors and still get the phones. If the jury passes the bill with that revision, it goes on to the next stage without having to be approved by the legislature with changes. This ensures there is no attempt at a backhand negotiation with the members of the Citizens Legislature with the legislators saying, "We will veto this if you strike the provision for our donors." The jury format also forces the citizens, like in a normal jury proceeding, to hear arguments for and against the bill, under a format similar to the preemptory legal challenge outlined in another video. This forces some degree of deliberation by the citizens that might not occur if you just had a widespread electronic vote, which citizens might not take seriously. The latter situation could allow a lot of bad stuff to slip through. There should be at least one stage of careful deliberations where people cannot simply outsource an analysis of the bill by using a voter file from someone they happen to respect. Essentially, the jury is acting as a third legislative body, without the ability to propose new bills and amendments and an unlimited line item veto power. This all stems from a thought experiment many years ago, thinking about the problem that those people who ran for public office, generally needing a lot of money and positive media attention to get elected, unfortunately that filters out some of the best candidates who would vote based on what is best for the country and not the corporate establishment that funds their candidacy. How do you subvert that bias? Why not just randomly select people all across the country to serve on the legislature? A truly random selection should give a good sample for each representative viewpoint. And these would be people who presumably were not bought off by the donor class. And this citizens jury will actually have people that better represent everyday people and their concerns than an elected legislature. Now, some of these people might not have the expertise to be capable of crafting legislation. But then again, a lot of current legislators do not as well. Often stuff is handed to them by think tanks, special interest groups, and their staff. Have you ever met your lawmakers in person before? You might be shocked at how absolutely clueless some of them are. But corporate lobbyists do not need people who can think for themselves. They just need to take orders on how to vote the right way. By having the existing permanent legislative staff that has the capabilities to make legislation, sending the legislation to be line item vetoed by a larger group of people who are randomly selected instead of elected, you have a check against corporate influence peddling and backroom legislative deals influencing the end product of the legislation. Once again, this process also forces legislators to write legislation that people can actually understand. There are certain specialized situations that can exist with legislation that do need to be handled with care. For example, budgeting and making sure everything is paid for when you can veto the taxes and vote up the spending. Median-based budgeting with a unified tax offset is one excellent way of dealing with the budgetary squabbles that can cause government shutdowns in the United States while also improving fiscal sanity. That video should be further down on the webpage where you are watching this video. This should be applied to every step of the legislative process, the lower house, upper house, citizens' legislature, and citizens' line item veto, to better manage the budgetary process. You could also introduce a similar median choice provisions without tax offsets to change arbitrary numbers in a legislation such as how many years someone gets for a certain crime or the fine imposed for certain crimes. Everyone will have different opinions on the right number, so it only makes sense for people to provide what they think is best and have the median of those voting carry forward in the legislative process, so long as it does not exceed the median voted on in the prior step in the process. Questions such as how this is implemented in practice should be handled differently in different jurisdictions. In some countries everyone might have a computer and you might be able to do Zoom teleconferences. In others, only an in-person meeting is practical. Through experimentation across different geographies and nations, we should be able to find those methods that work best and those which are most amenable to different cultures. That is one reason to implement another process-based agenda item not included in the 1984 No More agenda, because it might be too controversial to command a united front, local empowerment. The citizens' line item veto. After legislation is approved through the jury process, it will move on to the final stage, which is a popular vote by every citizen eligible to vote. Ultimately, you have to have some system of electronic voting to make this work. It is not practical to have everyone vote on every piece of legislation at a physical location using voting booths or scanned ballots. Ideally, you want people to have time at home to study and read through the issues and vote on each one in their own spare time before uploading or turning in the electronically signed results, so these votes should take place over a period of time if possible. For the few that might not have computers or mobile phones like the homeless, public computer centers can be set up at the equivalent of polling stations or libraries. An extended voting period can give these people time to go to central locations and make an informed decision. This vote should ultimately be on a line item veto basis, just like the jury ballot process. People should be given the right to approve or disapprove of any section they do not find palatable, especially since legislators have a habit of cramming things into a bill so stuff is overlooked. You can use open source technology to make the process of approving legislation more manageable for people without a lot of time on their hands. For example, people they trust, either friends or family, or politicians, members of political think tanks, etc., can provide recommendations provided in various digitally signed files that can be used to help people make decisions. The point is, everyone has the opportunity to have as much say as they want in the process. They can literally just upload a file that duplicates the vote of their favorite legislator, or they can go through even item line by line. It is up to that person. Power is returned to the people. For a full discussion of the citizens' line item veto in process, watch the following video. Yes, a citizen's veto is feasible.